Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maurie. I'm here with my husband, Jim, and we are here to talk about artificial intelligence. After I give him crap about how he is being very peculiar and very picky about the location of his microphone.
I I think it's fine. You can't. I talk low. You can't hear me unless it's close. And you buy these brand new
It's
chairs.
called editing in software.
Bought these brand new chairs that I can't move because they don't have wheels on them. So you just have to live with it. Anyway,
No, don't say anyway, because I'm still just a little bit irritated with you. And our audience likes it when I get irritated with you because they like watching me abuse you, right?
yeah.
So we are here to talk about something a little bit different. We've been very busy lately. And if you guys have been listening to our podcast, you know, we've had a lot going on. Of course, birth of grandchildren, death in the family, planning a wedding, working full time, doing AI Ed Pro full time. I mean, there's so much going on, a lot of stuff going on.
The personal stuff is the stuff that's the hardest because you don't want to bound the time. When you go to work, you know you're going to be there from this time to this time, typically, unless there's an emergency. But when you're spending the night in the hospital or you're like memorial services and all that stuff, it's just an enormous amount of time.
Right.
And
And you feel like you need to give it that time, like you just said. You don't
do.
want to like draw a box
and
around
then
it.
you have this enormous amount of money you're spending, and then you feel guilty because you're not, anyway, it is complicated.
That is a whole psychological podcast on its own. So
It
we won't go there. But one of the things that did happen is that on Sunday, we were told that our future daughter-in-law, Katie, was getting baptized. And we were asked to go to the baptism, which absolutely we were going to go. We did go. We also got to meet her parents, her dad and her stepmom. Amazing people. Had lunch. Had a great time.
We are in a small town.
Yes.
Church services. There was more people in the church before we walked into the actual place where the sermon was.
Right.
There was more people just walking around in the entire churches in Atlanta typically. Yeah.
Well, it was like walking into our high school campus or something like that. I mean, there were a lot of people there, and
to kind of churches like that.
Well, let's kind of put this in context real quick, because when we were driving down there and we were talking to them about the location and everything, one of the first things that you jokingly said is this a mega church? And Katie was like, no, it's not a mega church. You know, there's not going to be anyone zip lining in from the corner.
It was going to be, and that they were giving away tickets.
Right.
And there was a big switch going on.
But the back of our brains, did we not think, I bet there's a church somewhere that does stuff like that?
We did. So we're not going to get off on religion too much. It was a good ceremony. After they went through, they sang some songs, and they went through the
numerous people
baptism. There's a whole bunch of people, some young, some older, and then then we stayed for the
sermon.
And so on the way back,
what did we talk about?
We talked about AI because
I noticed,
just like with all the churches, when we were going to some of the larger churches, which I enjoyed, I'm not knocking the bigger churches. They have depending on the church. I mean, there's some of them that are ridiculous, but the true mega churches to me are ridiculous. But this is not one of those kind of mega churches. I didn't think it was.
No,
and we used to go to those. And there's, as part of especially with the songs, they have a slideshow going on with the songs. And I know a lot about that because I worked with a guy at Dell.
Long time ago. Way before AI.
And I used to watch him. I mean, during his lunch break and on, when he had breaks and stuff, he would prepare the slide deck for the church services. He wasn't writing the church service. He was just bringing in images and things that were relevant to the service. A lot of the time bringing the lyrics to the songs so people could follow along. Mm-hmm. But there's also transitions, just like in any presentation, this is a formal presentation where you transition from the songs, and then you transit to something else, and maybe something into the sermon.
Right. It was your order of service.
So it kept things kind of flowing in order.
Mm-hmm.
some of that stuff was obviously AI generated.
There were several videos. That's the first thing I noticed is like what they were doing for their transition. Like when we first got there and we sat down, there was a video that started playing, which we do this a lot when we are presenting to large crowds. One of the fastest ways to get the crowd's attention
Been telling you that for
is
years.
to play a video. And we do. We play a
You
video.
stopped doing that recently. I love those videos.
Are we going to have another argument on air?
I want to.
Okay. We play a video, it gets their attention. So that's the first thing I noticed in the service.
Quiet down when you play videos.
They did. I noticed that the video, very well done, but it was obviously AI generated. And I knew it because of the way it was only 5 or 6 seconds per little thing. They overlaid the music, and all this stuff. I didn't see any misspelled words, but it was AI generated. So that's the first thing I noticed.
And that's not bad, though. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Because most of the time these churches are volunteer based. A lot of times they do pay people, but they don't pay people very much. I have a very dear friend, very, very dear friend that is a minister, and she's like not the primary minister, she's a secondary, and she doesn't get paid that much money. So
yes.
But then we noticed another video when they were doing the transition.
Well, just to stop for a second. Way when Ron Lyle was doing them, he was getting his images and his videos and all that stuff.
Stock images.
To get stock images, stuff like that. So it wasn't like he was getting out the paintbrush or getting out the canvas, and painting it on the screen or whatever. So for me, there's not a huge difference. What difference does it make whether or not you borrow some image from somewhere else? Because he couldn't pay for them. So he was just getting stuff.
I used to do it free clip art, free, yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean the source, as long as the source is letting you use it, then there's really not a difference. Okay. And then we noticed, of course, another video. And then when we went to the sermon, the minister was very articulate, and he was very articulate, and he was very passionate about what he was doing. One of the things that he put on his slideshow, though, when he was going through like the last section of Hosea, a book in the Bible, I think it was chapter 14 or something like that. But anyway, he made a comment that a certain word had appeared in the Bible 1,060 times. And the first thing that I thought was,
I bet ChatGPT knows that.
I bet he got that information from an AI. It's like, I know, and maybe he did not. We are speculating here. This is just opinions.
Doesn't really matter if he did anyway. That particular piece of information, if he was going to look that up, he would have went to one of those online Bible tools
and searched,
and he would have done a search anyway.
Right.
So whether or not the AI answers it or not, the danger with the AI is
it correct?
Is it correct?
Because he made a big deal out of the fact that if this word, which was return, I believe, if that word had appeared 1,060 times where God was telling us to return, then it must be really important. So the first thing I was like, well, how accurate is that? And where did he get that from?
Okay, we're getting in the weeds.
This is my AI brain wanting this information. So what happened is you and I started having a very long conversation on the way home about how should religion utilize artificial intelligence? Well, what is okay and what is not okay?
And again, I felt like I told you that I wanted our podcast to become more about practical uses of AI that a normal person might see.
Right.
So this one resonated with me because religious life is important to a lot of people, not everybody, obviously, but it is important to some. So I used AI.
There you go.
To help me a bit. And we broke it down into what I thought was a decent comparison of where it might fit.
Okay.
And there's 4 of them. There's sermon prep, confession, administration, and authority.
Okay, so when you broke that down, did you not go? You went and did some research about how it's already starting to fit those.
I did research on basic Google search beforehand. Not that that's really any better.
It's not.
But knowledge is knowledge. You just have to be able to filter through it. The sermon prep. I mean, again, that's one of those things where that's prayer, study, personal experience. That part of it, you and I were debating on while we were walking a second ago. We'll come back. We'll come back to that in a second. And basically, what I saw is that AIs are drafting outlines and doing research. Okay, fair enough. Confession, private dialogue with a priest. I found an example of an interactive avatar, dos in machina. I think that's Latin. Maybe it's
Okay.
Italian.
I don't know.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Two in the machine? How do you spell the word?
Deus.
Deus.
Dos?
Mm.
That's not two. Is
No,
it?
it's not.
Anyway, administration, manual scheduling, outreach, automated follow-ups, data-driven engagement. Again, that's efficiency kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And then authority, human clergy, and sacred text. We're talking about algorithmic authority based on user-tailored responses. Again, I'll get into that in a second. Before I do, I wanted to get to some headlines that I
Okay.
found.
All right. What kind of headlines did you find? Because you and I can have a very good debate about this. So let's go.
So I found 3 headlines that I liked. One of them was kind of a headline. From World Religious News, just a couple of points that I found. There's a lot of points in it, but the Vatican says AI should assist humans, not replace conscious wisdom or spiritual meaning.
Okay. So, like, basically, the Vatican has already put out some AI guidelines.
Yeah, better than most school districts.
Yes.
Its warning is basically don't let efficiency and automation redefine what it means to be human. That's fair. Now, there was some other stuff in that we could go into deeper if we have time, but for the moment, I just want to get through the headlines. APnews.com. This is a Catholic chapel in Lucerne ran an AI Jesus experiment inside a confessional style setup. Organizers said it was art and reflection and not real confession or a substitute for it. That particular one was where I think the dose and the machina came from. I'm thinking. Lucerne, Switzerland. Yeah, after 2 months run of the dose in machina exhibit at Peter, that's what it's called, at Peter's Chapel. 900 conversations from visitors. Some came more than once, were transcribed anonymously. Those behind the project said it was largely a success. Visitors often came out moved or deep in thought.
So basically, they had an AI pretending to be the priest and listening to the confession.
I think they even had an avatar, like Jesus avatar.
Sit and stand it. Okay.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a line.
Well, yeah, I think it's a little creepy, but
Yeah.
if people knew what they were getting into, maybe not.
Well, they had it as an art exhibit, so people didn't know. Okay.
Businesswire.com. This was some kind of a press release. It says 1 in 3 U.S. adults view AI spiritual advice as trustworthy as a pastor. That's frightening.
Yeah, that is.
It also says 12% of pastors only 12% feel comfortable teaching about AI, while 31% of practicing Christians want guidance on AI. I'm not sure why they would want guidance from church on AI.
I don't know if it's saying they want a priest to give them guidance. I think they're probably wanting to know more about the ethics and stuff behind it.
Of AI, maybe?
Of AI, maybe.
Yeah, this article was February 19th of this year in Nashville, Tennessee, during this year's National Religious Broadcasters Convention.
Mm-hmm.
This is where this stuff came from. Roughly 4 in 10 practicing Christians say AI helped them with prayer, Bible study, or spiritual growth. I use it for that.
Yes.
Among pastors, about 4 in 10, 41% report using AI for Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
1/3 of practicing I mentioned that earlier, and then the 12% thing. So there's a fair amount of people that are using it. I made a AI tool of my own, which I'll talk about in just a second, and that was about theology and religion. But I had a very, very specific reason why I did.
Okay. Well,
The last headline. This is actually more of somebody's personal. It's called catalystnews.com. I don't think this is one of the larger publications, but the quote was interesting. A major concern is not just theology, but who controls the theology people receive. The article warns that faith-oriented AI tools are being built largely by private companies rather than religious institutions, which means engagement, incentives, personalization, and platform retention could shape the advice. That's fair.
It is fair because if it's companies and large corporations that are trying to get you to go to their AI religious advisor, then they're going to want to keep you there. They're going to want to advertise to you. They're going to want to.
What is the word I love using so much nowadays?
There's a lot of them.
Sycophantic.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the characteristics of ChatGPT when it came out with the 5.0, 5.1, 5.2 is that it's so agreeable. I've thought about canceling my subscription.
Right.
And I had one of the first subscriptions I had.
Right.
And I've literally thought about canceling it because I'm sick of that.
You're sick of it. Rachel calls it a butt kisser.
I call it a butt kisser.
Yeah.
Don't you disagree?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the headlines. And
okay. So now let's talk about what you did with your GPT or whatever it is that you did.
I am interested in a Jewish scholar, Gerald Schrader. I've read many of his books, and he talks a lot about Old Testament because he's Jewish, But most of his all of his sources are pre World Wide Web, internet, pre-digital age. So he uses sources that are very old. And his book's titles are what God said kind of stuff. And he interprets it resonated well with me. A couple of his books did, because he talks about whether or not the dinosaurs are mentioned in
The old stuff.
the dinosaurs are mentioned at all in the Bible.
Right.
And if you want to find out the answer to that, buy one of his books, because it's in there, and
Okay.
he has a very good explanation.
Is he the one that wrote The Science of God?
Yes.
Okay.
So unfortunately, the fact that I was able to do this means that when they trained the AIs, they ingested his books, which is another whole topic for people to argue about.
Yeah.
But I wanted his teachings, along with the actual Bible. And then I wanted to get perspectives. Like, I didn't know that each one of the Gospels in the New Testament were written specifically for a particular audience. Like Romans were written, not Romans as in
Got it.
Romans.
The book.
One of the books was written specifically for like Roman citizens. One was written more for the everyday person. There's different perspectives. I didn't know that. And of course, you have to verify through, if you really, really want to dig deep into it and you don't believe the AI is correct. But it was a very interesting perspective. So I wanted the ability to have a discussion with a theologian that had the expertise in both. Here's the difference, though, between me and that pastor on Sunday.
Okay.
I am not a spiritual leader. You tell me I should be, but I'm not. I do not think that, and this is one of the things we were arguing about when we were walking, I do not think that a pastor preparing the Sunday sermon should use AI at all.
Okay.
Your turn.
Well, I think that I know a lot of pastors. A good friend of ours, James, is one of them. And I think that
James didn't use AI.
He did not.
Because AI wasn't around then.
It was not. But he also complained a lot about the amount of time it took him to prepare for his Sunday 1 hour, half an hour sermon.
James was not a paid preacher.
Okay.
He had his own following, but I don't think he ever made enough money off of it to make a living off of it.
So my point that I was making to you is that if I am a spiritual leader, and first of all, some people can remember the book and the chapter and the verse of the scripture. I know people who can. Some people cannot. I know I couldn't. I can say, it says in the Bible that, but I could not tell you exactly where to go to see that or find that. If I am a spiritual leader and I am not able to memorize the book, the chapter, the verse, and I want to prepare a sermon about forgiveness or about purpose-driven life or about, whatever it is I want to prepare, and maybe I can remember one of the verses, that I want to do 5 or 6 verses to kind of back myself up, that I don't see why I can't go to a resource like AI and say, can you give me 6 Bible verses that you know with the book, the chapter, the verse that have to do with forgiveness? And then as the spiritual leader, I can go and I can verify that those are in fact in the Bible that is physically in my hand while I am preparing my sermon. So I'm not saying that I need to have the AI write my sermon or tell me the words that I need to say when I'm saying my sermon, but I definitely feel like a spiritual leader can use the tools at their disposal to find information as long as they're verifying that it is factual information.
Every single person in a church, efficiency AI, which is a lot of what I talked about here earlier when I was talking about sermon prep. You're talking about sermon prep. I was talking about administration, that kind of stuff. Any of that, because it's very complex. It is a business.
Mm-hmm.
And the comment the Catalyst News thing made about businesses, private businesses controlling it, especially these mega church, it is a business.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but it's efficiency versus not. I mean, who's controlling the information? It's a mega church.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Hold on. I wasn't done. I your statement is knowledge. Resources that I access that knowledge base, it shouldn't make any difference if I'm using Google to research it or if I'm using the, AI that's ingested the Bible and I'm using it. I think, and maybe I could argue that, you could argue with me long enough to convince me that, 5 or 10% of their time could be spent there. But I've spent a lot of time recently with PCSD, which is that system that I helped create, or I created mostly for my son to use as a mechanism to learn. And one of the things that it reminded me of, because I had to go back to the way I learned, was that learning happens at friction points. And I think for you to be a spiritual advisor, you have to put in the friction. I've read the Bible 5 times. I've read most of religious texts. Had I memorized them? Absolutely not. But if I became a preacher, I'd probably read it 5 more times, because what I would want to do was have enough familiarity with where it talks about different things. First of all, most of my folks would be New Testament, because the Old Testament is the covenant God had with the Hebrew, not with
Right.
with us non-Jewish folk. But I would spend a lot of time reading it, and I would organize it. And I'm not saying the preacher shouldn't use it as a tool to learn and understand and argue with.
Like a study guide, like a
Well,
study
not
buddy,
a study buddy.
while he is
While
becoming a
he
teacher.
is going, and well, even after he becomes one, if you're sitting around on Friday or Thursday afternoon, like I do with AI, on topics, I argue with it all the time. I want to understand a particular topic, so I want to understand it from different angles. So it's like having an expert. I get that. But when it comes to writing your sermon, it should be personal. There is nothing more human than spirituality.
Mm.
Spirituality is not AI. It's not Google. It's not a database. Spirituality is how we humans try to interpret the world around us and the stuff we can't see as well, how we feel, how we interact with each other. There's a whole lot of aspect. And I'm not talking about just Christianity. I'm talking about any religion, typically moral-based thing. Even philosophies like Buddhism are still about the world and us interacting,
how we should interact with each other.
And I feel like the preacher should there ought to be some pain involved.
Okay, so I think we kind of agree, though. I think you just don't understand or realize that you're agreeing with me.
No, because you think he should be allowed on Saturday when he's preparing Sunday's sermon to use I don't.
So
when it comes down to Sunday's sermon,
if I am a minister and I have an assistant, a human assistant, a secretary, and I say, I need you to find me 5 verses that have to do with forgiveness.
Okay.
And that secretary comes back and gives me 5 verses that have to do with forgiveness. And then I write my sermon and I use those 5 verses in my sermon as reference. How do I know that that human assistant had not used AI to find those 5 verses?
So I think that it should be offloaded. I don't think that should have been offloaded to an assistant.
I think there have been like large religious institutes for a long time that have used associate pastors and things like that to help with the research before the Sunday sermon.
The sermon. I just don't agree with that. I think
we are going to disagree.
We're going to disagree, but I think when you look at, and if someone does art for a living, do I think they should use AI? Not really. Do I think you should ban all art based on AI? No. The story I always tell about is my grandmother. My grandmother could have never afforded actual person-based art. Not whenever she just didn't have any money.
She had to buy the prints.
And so but she liked pretty things. She likes pictures on the wall. She liked flowers and vases, that kind of stuff. So she bought the prints because it's all she could afford. Would I begrudge my grandmother something pretty to go on her wall?
Right.
By saying, well, I'm sorry, you can't use an AI to generate it. I disagree with that.
But that's not your religious advisor.
Your religious advisor, and oh, by the way, backing up to, do I think AI, large language models, should have been allowed to use people's art to train their models without paying them? Absolutely not. I think that is theft. And I think it's the genie's out of the bottle, Pandora's box is open. I don't think there's anything you can do about that now. They're trying to argue that they should still be able to use copyrighted material. I think that's wrong. I think that these people are trying to earn a living. They should get paid for what they do. I think there's a lot of areas of gray as to what that payment means and how you pay them. But you know what? The record industry figured it out to some degree. I mean, it's not perfect, but they figured out when you play music, you hear music on a radio station, there's some incremental amount of that money that's being generated going back to that. At least that's how I
Or is it
understand it.
supposed to?
That's
Yeah.
how I understand it. So again, I don't think the preacher should do it. Everything else, everybody else, absolutely use the AI tools. Use it for efficiency all day long.
So let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. You're saying that I can use artificial intelligence while I'm in seminary. I can use it to help me study. I can use it to argue with. I
Mhm.
can use it to help me learn the different perspectives and points of the Bible.
I think it's a tool.
And
Yes.
I can use it as a minister. I can use it for the same thing.
In
As
general, yes.
But when it comes to me sitting down and saying, we're going to have a sermon about
That's personal.
XYZ, it has to stay as human as absolutely possible.
Whenever I create the first draft of when we're working on something like we wrote our first book, or when I'm doing even for this podcast, I go first. I don't ask the AI, hey, what are the ideas you have for me to do a podcast ever? I should, because I'd probably get better answers than topics that people actually want to hear, but I don't. And I don't, the first things that I type in are not AI, they're me. You can tell how bad my grammar is
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
look at it. I like to write things and they're personal for me. This particular thing, when you talk to me about, okay, well, maybe we should do this week, like this one, I try to figure out a personal connection to it. For me, it's just like whenever when I wanted to learn something, I would create a personal project that was important to me
Mhm.
because that way I could stay focused because I have a bit of a focus problem. So over time, I learned, don't laugh at me. Over time, I learned that the best way for me to do things was to start throwing it out there, see what it is that I like, make it personal, make it part of me. And you know what? Wad up a piece of paper and throw it in the trash, wad up another, make your notes.
I think one of the things, and we'll wrap up on this. The last podcast we did, we had somebody, our daughter, on about practical use of AI and
And in this case, it was about
her
conceiving.
conceiving and during pregnancy and
Yes.
after the
And she
baby
still
was
uses it
born,
for
and she
that.
still uses it a lot. And one of the things that she said that she had realized to do was to do risk versus reward. And I think what you're trying to say is that someone who is truly a spiritual advisor,
Mhm.
that people are basing decisions and the way they feel
Very
about
important
something,
decisions,
very
how they
important stuff.
interpret the world around them. Yes.
Right. Someone that is using you to base those decisions off of what you are saying, that spiritual advisor, the risk to the person taking that advice is higher than the reward of them being able to utilize artificial intelligence.
I think the slippery slope is if I'm a preacher and or priest or whatever, and I start using AI to help me with pretty soon it's like, you know what? I'm just going to let it give me some suggestions. I think you have to put, just like an artist does, there has to be a little blood, sweat, and tears. Engineers will tell you the same thing. You've got to play with something a little bit to got to get a feel for it before you can truly understand it in a way that allows you to control it or allows you to do something with it.
Hmm.
In the case of an engineer, it's generally control it. But I think it's the same thing for a preacher. And I think, again, these discussions are happening because we have a knowledge tool, unlike any we've ever had, that allows us to take all the human knowledge and compress it and utilize it. Just to give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you take the PCSD thing that I'm doing with
The
Jared,
framework.
and you take that framework and you take it to its logical conclusion. In other words, you continue forward with what I'm doing as we iteratively improve the tool throughout this semester when we're piloting with Jared. What I'm trying to build is a simulation of a person. I'm trying to build a professor simulation
Okay.
that understands the likes, dislikes,
Of the
and
actual
of the
professor.
actual professor to have a better feel for what's going to be on the test, so I can make sure I'm studying the right things, to listen to them talk and interpret how I interpret versus what they interpret. I take all that information and I build a simulation, sort of.
Hmm.
It's a similar idea. I have specific steps on how to do that. I think you have the same danger when you start using a tool when you're talking about spiritual thing. Pretty soon you start, the simulation starts becoming more real. It starts feeling more like it's able to address these things, like the people who like to talk to AI about their spiritual needs. I think that you need to be careful of getting on that slope at all. Now,
So
that being said,
what I'm hearing is that if I am a minister and I am responsible for my parishioners,
and you are,
and I am my flock, whatever you want to call it,
yep.
and I start utilizing artificial intelligence, pretty soon the AI is probably going to be something I'm going to go, what's the top concern that we're having right now in the United States? And it's going to tell me, here you go, here's what you need to preach on. And I'm losing touch with my actual parishioners.
Especially the very local ones.
That's what I'm saying. The
Because
actual people that I am
one
part
of the
of.
reasons that we have
I
gone to
can
church as
understand that.
much is because too much politics from the pulpit.
Right.
And I don't want to hear
Political
nationwide
opinions.
politics from
Right.
a pulpit. What I want to hear is,
what can I do at my local soup kitchen?
yeah,
What can
what's
I do
going
at
on
my
here
local?
locally?
Mhm.
How is the spiritual well-being?
Mhm.
Now, not every church here local is like that. There are churches here, and we've been to a few, but there are churches here that are really focused on local. They're really focused on helping out people who are having a problem,
Right.
giving, because they helped us.
I haven't been to every single church in
We have
Atlanta.
not.
I mean, there is a
'Cause
lot
there's
of
a bunch.
churches. Yeah.
But anyway, we're out of time. But I think somebody wants to sit down and argue with me, they could argue that I'm being hypocritical because I use AI all the time. And therefore, why am I saying somebody shouldn't? And a teacher could say, well, the same argument can be made for a kid. The kid can't learn if they're using these AI tools to think for them. That's why I created the PCSD framework, because I wanted to put friction points back in, but I didn't take the AI out of the loop.
Right.
You could use that same idea if you're a preacher, because what I'm using it to do is
Argue and
construct knowledge.
But the actual idea of what the sermon is on and about, and
your original thoughts,
and the original
and all that
thoughts need to be
stuff,
part of it.
it needs to. You have to have some personal connection to it, and I think you're in
Makes
danger
sense.
of losing that personal connection if you utilize a cognitive service in order to help you do it.
Okay. I know that we were a little off topic, but hey,
We didn't
you
go
know
off
what?
topic. You told me
No,
to talk
as
about
in,
religion.
well, I'm just saying that we don't
And
normally talk about religion. We
no.
quite often we've said that we're not going to really talk about religion or politics, but
We talk about both.
sometimes you have to kind of dive a little
Well,
deeper.
I'm not
We
judging.
delved. We delved.
I'm not
into-
judging religion. I'm just talking about where I personally think
It is
AI
100%
fits
opinion.
and where it doesn't fit.
This is 100% opinion. So my name, a lot of them. My name is Maurie. I'm here with my husband, Jim. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope that y'all have a marvelous rest of the week.